guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go, this is the competition rules. These are the rules that govern the race. And I'm just going to hit the highlights because, again, it's all written out for you. It's online in several places. And let me make a, I make fun of the whole interweb thing pretty frequently, like all of you who couldn't bother to be here today, so you sat in your comfy chair in Dallas and what kind of thing. Patty said I'm not supposed to say that, but I can't help myself. Because you guys show the true commitment showing up here today. I'm proud of you. Before you actually finish registering, I think there's 3 separate times that you have to acknowledge that you read and understood the rules. So, at that point, seriously, folks, you should have read and understood the rules. And this applies even to, let's call them guys who finished the race 20 times. They act like it's a whole different ball of wax every year. It's not, but there's generally something different. So the places to not get your information from are, if you have a question, send it to texaswatersafari@yahoo.com, correct? Do not send it to the Facebook page. Do not send it, because then Patty sends it to me, and I get aggravated at Patty for sending me something off of the Facebook page that you should have been smart enough to send to the actual email address.
Just assume I don't know anything.
Well, it's not the not knowing, it's just the fact that that's not the place to get information. Yes?
Is email spelled completely out?
Yes.
Yep. All one word. And I will tell you this, you will find no lack of opinions on the interwebs. I mean, on, the Martindale Athletic Club, the Houston HTX, and the A, whatever that one is, and whatever. Let me tell you something. If you didn't hear it from Jerry Cochran, Bob Spain, Alan Spelter, Jay Daniel, it ain't official. It doesn't matter that you're a 10-time finisher and a second-place finisher last year, and you're constantly, well, I've talked to I've talked to a board member. He ain't a board member, and he don't know. I don't like to be the grumpy guy, but man, there's forever getting bad information out there on stuff that's written in plain English. So read this stuff completely. Which, admittedly, I found an error I made this morning when I was reading it. So you read it completely. Look for my errors. That's fine with me. I'm used to it. So all that is much ado about. Don't get your information online. And then if it's somebody online and they have failed to finish the race like 4 or 5 times, after starting it 4 or 5 times, that's probably not your best source of information. I'm just saying. Or, if they're consistently finishing in 99.9 hours, probably not the ones to give you advice on how to race.
And Jay is referencing, look on the website, texaswatersafari.org. All of the rules on the drop-down are available to read today as you're watching the live stream.
You can follow along, except for I'm skipping a lot of stuff. Let's see. Everybody's got to stay in the same boat. This is one of those rules that, it's like, how do you come up with this? It's because it says all members of a team must travel together in the same boat and canoe under the same regulation. That doesn't include your team captain. This is on the list of stuff that you can't make up. One year, we'll call it 1986, they're looking for the last boat in the race. Are there any attorneys in here? Because I'm getting ready to make fun of them too. So the 2 guys that are racing are attorneys, and they have read this, and it says all members of the team must travel together. And so they're looking around for their team captain. They get there, and it's a standard boat, but there's 3 people in the boat, and you can only have 2 people. It's like, what's going on here? The guy's like, well, I'm the team captain. He said, when they need water, I give it to them. Yeah. So the racers are in the boat. The team captain is on the back. If somebody drops out of the race, you can't get back in. There are no relays in the water safari. All listed equipment must be in the possession and listed on your check-in sheet. This is always a fun one. Teams shall not receive help or assistance of any kind during the Texas Water Safari, except verbal assistance or those items listed in Section 4 of the Team Captain Rules and Responsibilities. So, here's the thing. Every year, oh, he touched somebody. Or, somebody touched him or whatever. To the best of my knowledge, nobody's ever been penalized for kissing their wife or hugging their kids during the race. There have been some guys who probably got penalized at home for kissing their wife because they were so gross, or vice versa. But that's not something we're going to disqualify. We can't stop the 3-year-old from grabbing your leg and say, "Dad, Dad," except for they would probably vomit after they smelled you at Victoria. That's the medical care required by a team member. This is another thing we get common questions about. It is the sole discretion of the team members and or the team captains to request medical care from any individual to blah, blah, blah. By signing the entry form, the waiver, we're not under any obligation. Look, man, I don't care if you have, Bob and Jerry may tell me different when I say this. I don't care if there's a doctor sitting at Hoheim and you have a gash running the length of your arm. If you want that doctor to give you medical assistance and stitch your arm back up so you can go, that is between you and your team captain. That is requested medical assistance. It is extreme stupidity on your part, but you can do it. You can get that. I mean, if you want them to hang an IV bag and, do that, more power to you. Especially if you're in the top 15, because then it gives me a chance to move up a little bit. So, yes, you can get medical assistance, and it can pretty much be, if they want to take your appendix out, I don't care. What is an appendix for anyway? One of those questions. Oh.
That's good, Jerry.
I didn't even know you'd read a book. We mentioned paddlers will be subject to spot check at any times by judges or officials. That's reported to the head race official. Any penalties from any time penalty or disqualification, that's not done by checkpoint officials. The only people who can actually impose a penalty is the head race judge. That's TBD right now for this year. The race chairman, more than likely Robin Reed, or the board members. And the board members don't unilaterally impose a penalty. It can't be Bob just coming up and saying, I saw you do this, we're going to give you 30 minutes. We would discuss that amongst ourselves. Let's see. You have to go over, around any obstacle from the originating point in San Marcos along the entire length of the river and bays to the finish line. For any shortcut to be legal, and this is tough, and especially low water years, because there's places that are shortcuts often that don't have any water in them. For it to be a legal cut, it has to have a flow of water through it. It doesn't have to be enough to float your boat, but it has to be a flow of water through it. This one is overland portages are not allowed except where necessary for log jams, dams, or bridges. This is primarily on the lower river. It happened up around Palmetto a few years ago. You can get a jam. The river's bending like this, and there's a jam right here. So you have to get out for it. What that means is you have to get out on this side of the jam and get back in over here. You can't cut that point off. I mean, you can, but that's a penalty. That's cheating. Down on the lower river, especially in high water, there are places where you can look over and you can see it. Probably none of y'all will ever see high water, I believe, at this point. I think that's a thing of the past. But you can look over and you can see a piece of the river that's actually a quarter mile away because it's a big bunch of bends. So can't over. Now, all that to say, if there are a series of log jams like there can tend to be on the lower river, you don't have to get in and out and in and out for all of them. In 2009, there was literally a mile-long portage on the lower river because there were a series of jams there. And that was the least amount of fun I've ever had portaging. Exception to this rule where there is river or bay water but are still illegal. The left channel around Thompson's Island below the road bridge, will show you that briefly on the course description. And yes, Shannon, if you're watching, that still means you cannot go under the road bridge in the mill race and then portage into it. You have to go under the regular road bridge. Because she's going to ask me again, and it still can't do it. The Victoria Barge Canal and the boat cut between San Antonio Bay and the Barge Canal. This one's getting tough, folks. It used to be when they would dredge the Barge Canal that they would put all of that spoil in a long island, which physically separated the Barge Canal from the bay. Some law that was passed a few years ago that can no longer put spoil back into the water has to be pumped on the banks, so those spoil islands are going away. It's not really a shortcut to go through the Barge Canal. I mean, I guess it could be back when it was pretty closed in because it's deeper water and it was protected by the spoil island to keep the wind out of it. What's happened is those have eroded, but we don't want you in there because if you have ever been near one of those barges, as they go through an enclosed area like that, every bit of water they displace becomes a wave that sends you over. Kristen and I were, however far it is from the edge of the Barge Canal to the finish line this last year, and the wake off of one of those barges hit us and our team member and flipped us out of the boat when it hit that shallow spot on the other side of the barge. So if you're in that enclosed area, it's dangerous. If you find yourself in there, you go back out where you came in. We won't penalize you for that. But if you've made progress through there, we're going to penalize you in one way, shape, or form. It's a safety violation. It's not one of those things where, did I miss anything on that? I mean, it's dangerous. So please learn that. Go spend some time in the bay. Not swimming. I mean, I've done enough of that for all of us. But figure out where you're at and where not to be. And I think you can see the channel markers along there if you're looking for them, but you just don't want to end up in there. Any questions about that really confusing thing I just said?
Any questions from Casey?
Will you show us the map of that later on with the course? Will you show that on the map and we'll see the
Yeah, it shows up a little bit on as we get there. Let's see, and any cuts between Highway 59 and that's Loop 175 if you're older, and Swinging Bridge, any cuts in that area are illegal. So there's some places you could go, but you can't do it during the race. Coastal portion of the race shall be from the mouth of the river to the finish line. You can't make overland portages in there. You can't, go paddle up to the edge. Now, there is a map online, I assume it's online still, that I made that shows the legal portage route. It's on there, okay. So, you can get up and you can walk the edge of the bay all the way from the point all the way around. And you don't have to. One of the big questions was when you got to the marina, did you have to then follow the marina out? You don't. You can cut that off. And then there's a spot where channel comes out. You're going to have to paddle across that, or it's probably about 1.5 mile hike to get to somewhere to where you could cross it physically. So that is the Barge Canal. I mean, the portage route of the whole thing.
The spot trackers there is an out of bounds, so there is a way for the officials to know where you're at if
Right.
the tracker's working. So don't think you can just go in the Barge Canal and nobody's going to
Yeah,
see it or something. I mean, we do try to monitor that. We're trying to keep people out of it.
And Jeff Snyder, who's been our spot tracker director for many years, actually pretty much single-handedly built the whole app that we use. Set it up, it's got geofences in it, just because it'll set off an alarm if you're outside of those areas. And again, that's a safety issue, not because you can really advance your position much in that. Let's see. You have to wear your PFD as soon as you get in the bay. In case of stormy weather or high winds, get up, find a way across. You can row, paddle, walk, swim, carry, or drag the boat. We mentioned that. And here's the penalties listed. Teams entering the barge canal may be disqualified or face a minimum time penalty of 2 hours. Let's see. Intentional interference with another team's progress during the race will be grounds for disqualification. Kristen touched on pace boats indirectly earlier. You can't have a pace boat. There can't be somebody, in a John boat going down the river from Gonzo to Hoheim that you can get on their wake and just surf. Man, it'd be so nice, but you can't do it. So don't want to do that. And there's not, you see these guys that are like swimming the English Channel and they've got a boat that's got all their support with it. You can't have, even that. It's like you can only meet at the access points. And then this is really important. Deliberate littering. Deliberate is the key word here. Littering of the river is grounds of disqualification. Teams should keep their trash in the canoe and hand it over to persons on the bank. Now, this is probably, and we'll hit this again when we go through the course description, this is the biggest change in the rules this year. When I did my first water safari, there were no cutoff times, but there were only about 40 of us or 50 of us in the race. And so cutoff times are both to keep the race moving along, and it's also to help us to find you. So no longer can you have somebody at Palmetto, at 75 hours saying, I still have 25 hours left in the race. The whole point of these changes was you now have, if I'm doing my math right, from 3 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon, that's 10 hours to get from Calhoun's to the finish line. We spent quite a bit of time looking through old splits through the years, and the idea is very few people would actually be caught by these changed cutoff times, except for at the very end. We were tending to get folks that are getting to Calhoun's and they've got, what did we have, 5 hours at that point to finish, and you have a bay like last year and you're not going to finish in 5 hours if everything's going well. And so we've changed these. So familiarize yourself with these. These are important. I will tell you this, in the race sense of things, is do not use the cutoff times. Do not use the cutoff times for your race plan. That's the kind of thing. I'll use Staples for instance. The closest I came up with of somebody who would have missed this cutoff time or came really close to missing this cutoff time was boat 314 a few years ago. Had literally been broken in half right behind our house. And they got it together and got down to Staples and made the cutoff, and they actually finished the race, which was pretty phenomenal. I need to find some pictures of that and show it someday. But the cutoffs are there for something bad happens. If you're really making an attempt to race, I know a lot of you are probably sitting here thinking, man, this is an adventure of a lifetime. But remember, it is a race. That's the point, is to get there as fast as you can. And if as fast as you can is 100 hours, well, that's cool. But we're trying to don't use that as your race plan, because it will catch up to you. You get to, Staples at 2 in the afternoon. It's like, oh, now I've got to get to Luling. It's like you're hustling along. It's like, oh man, I made it to Luling at 7:50. I must be, and so on and so forth. And sooner or later something happens. You're tired. You're sick. You're having a fight with your partner or whatever, and it's not going to work out. And then I am not going to go through boat types and special recognition. You can all read that online. I will tell you this. read this before you send a question to us. I love answering the questions on, does this boat fit the standard class or does this boat fit the novice class? But if you ask me if you can have a rudder on your standard boat or your novice boat, I'm going to tell you just to go read this stuff because it says right there in plain English, no rudders allowed. Or at least in South Texas English. I don't know how they speak in California or anything. But no, yeah, so all of it's explained there. So any questions over all that before we get to the course description? Man, we may actually get to eat on time.
Any questions on Facebook on what was just covered on the rules and changes on the times?
How many time penalties are enforced or applied during a typical race here?
Not very many, actually. It's generally, it's more and more happened with the barge canal because of what I was talking about. There's no longer, there's just big gaps in there, so people end up in there. And we're trying to get, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the guy who's won this race more times than anybody, hands down, 16 times or 17 times, I can't keep it straight.
16, I think.
Was racing solo, and he was about to catch my team coming down through there. He was so excited at how fast he was. He went across the bay and didn't put his life jacket on because he was just excited about the whole thing. And let me tell you, the guy who's won this race more than any time, you want to be the guy to walk up to him and say, guess what, we're giving you an hour penalty? But we did, because he didn't have his life jacket on. A few years ago, this is where we talked about the mandatory race briefing. One of the things that happens semi-frequently is there'll be a place where we have to have a mandatory portage for whatever reason. Water's high. Actually, you can have down the saltwater barrier could be because the water's really low and they have it have the gates up. It used to say inflated, but they don't inflate anymore. And so there'll be a mandatory portage. So a few years ago, same kind of situation. Guys running along in second place solo, and right under Martindale Low Water Bridge after we had announced it during the race briefing, and he got a 2-hour penalty. You know, fortunately, it did not cost him either a position or his division. But I mean, it could happen. You could end up with one of those close races where. So all that to say, not often, but that's why I can probably remember the specific example. Or you do some dumb stunt before the race, and you get a penalty.
The thing about penalties, we want you to finish.
Right.
We really are not trying to kick you out of the race or even penalize you. That's why we sometimes have to converse about it with board members when there's something that's not really clear. So we try to give you the benefit of the doubt if we can. But we do have rules that we're going to enforce, as he said. And so if you have to lose a life jacket, you better tell us, because you need to have that jacket going across the bay, and we'll give you one, but there's an automatic penalty associated with it.
Yeah, and that's Bob said it best right there. We want you to finish the race, but we want you to finish it within the rules, and that's what the penalties are. Just kind of, I started saying my dad popping me on the back of the head, but that's probably considered abuse nowadays. Kind of thing. It's like, hey man, that's not the way you do it. This is the right way to do it. So, I mean, we and it's a pain in the butt. I mean, we really don't want to do it because it's just a royal pain. All right. Questions, corrections, or words of amazement before we go on to the course description?
Got a dumb question. So you miss a time, you are disqualified, you are forced to get out?
That's right. If for instance, you get to Staples at 2:30 in the afternoon, you're done. I mean, the race is over for you.
Right, and you keep paddling without winning the race, you are...
No, matter of fact, it's mentioned in the rules pretty specifically. If you continue on after you've been disqualified in that situation, we're likely not going to let you race again. And again, it's not to be jerks. It's because it creates an issue with us keeping track of things. I mean,
We don't want to be responsible for you. We let you continue if something happened to you, as far as insurance, I don't know how that would go. So we just say, you're out of the race. So we've had people that want to go on, but they decided not to because they want to do it for next year.
I mean, again, I always hate the part where it says, sounds like don't. we're gonna spank you if you do this, or you know, we're gonna talk bad about your little sister if you do that kind of thing. I mean, talk bad about my little sister, I'd be okay with it. But all that to say is we're trying to keep it within the rules. We're trying to keep it compact. But that's a good question, you know, because it is a free river. You know, we've had people say we don't want to sign up for the race. We're just going to start at City Park and go. And you know, same situation. You do that and create an issue for us, we're going to, we probably wouldn't let you race in the future. That's, you know, there was this, now I will say I did this one. I was at Luling Dam when I was head race judge last time, and there were some guys paddling down that had numbers on their boats for whatever reason, and I was like, it's like, what are you talking about? They'd race like the Buffalo Bayou Regatta or something, and we're just there for their weekend fun. So we're not infallible. I mean, Jerry is, but the rest of us, we're not. All right, on to the course description. Kristen has my mouse, so I have to do this old-fashioned way. Check-in, we've talked about that. This is at the Meadow Center, aka Aquarina Springs,
The video is not that great.
but
It shows
not
you
as
the
AKA'd as it used to be. And check-in is both alternately my least favorite part of the entire water safari, and it's my favorite part of the water safari. It's my least favorite because I'm generally stressed out because of helping to put on the race, or because do I have all of my stuff in the boat. But it's also my favorite thing because I get to see people that this is probably the first time I've seen some of them all year, unless they bother to show up for the prelim, which most people do nowadays. And you know, Bob mentioned that it's like a family thing. It is all the warts and everything that come with the family. You know, good parts and the bad parts. You know, I used to be the rotten little brother, and now I got old. So I'm not the little brother anymore. I'm just a rotten old guy. So course description.
You stay right there when you're talking.
Yes, ma'am.
You tell me.
You stay out of this, Jeanette. No, but maybe. This is the beginning. Races started here, not every year. There have been a few years where things have happened where we started downstream for whatever reason, generally damage to the dam or something like that. And so you're going to, it's funny, Sandy and I were talking about this. There's not a lot of good pictures of the first portage because there's not a good place for the photographers to get. But first thing that's going to happen is you're going to run into the dam at the end of Spring Lake. Now, I saw some of you trying to write all this down. You can write it as much as you want. It's all online, so you can download it. And you know, because nobody knows how to keep a secret anymore, it'll all be all over the interwebs soon, anyhow. But you're going to get. Sometimes we have to mark off where the portage. This is actually something that's become pretty frequent. Mark where the portages are allowed at Burleson Dam or Spring Lake Dam or whatever the right name to call it is anymore. They keep changing names on stuff for me.
There will be areas marked out where there are wild rice, equal other rice, and other habitats.
Right. You know, and there's often, even below there's places that get marked because it has wild rice. 2015 and 98 flood filled in a lot of deep areas through the upper river because of the restriction from Aquarita Drive. They're actually getting ready to change all that, oddly enough. And so then the next flood will maybe clean it back out. So this is, and look at this, that's the view from putting in. On the right is the Meadow Center, like I said, Aquarina Springs if you're old. There are no more swimming pigs. That'll really show you're old. And there's no more Sky Ride or any of that stuff. It's now gone from being an amusement park type of place. It's actually a learning center for, it's Southwest Texas, for Texas State University. Because, again, first university I got kicked out of. It's true. This everybody getting in, and we line up in rows of 6. Bless his heart, Bob, every year goes and sets up the row markers, and every year you have about 170 boats that can't, including my own, trying to tell, is this row 3, is this row 8, does row 8 position 1 start on the right or left? I don't know the answer to that, actually.
Right or left?
Huh?
Usually just let that little people in that row.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard. It's one of those things like get in the right row, and you can fight it out with your row members.
If you're in the prelim and you want to start on the left, we're going to assume since you have the pole position, that's where you start. You're going to start on the right. And so it's more about the managing which row you're on. It's not going to make much difference which side.
Bob?
So you may want to say something about out-of-state teams who aren't coming to prelim as far as how we can slot them in.
Oh.
Right. Yes, Kristen mentioned earlier if it's a completely out-of-state team. She said mixed out-of-state team, and she meant mixed like Texan and not Texan. No, you just said mixed team. But I wouldn't say anything, huh? Like a real mixed team would be like somebody from Texas and somebody that came from California. That's about as mixed as you can get, right? But basically, she mentioned Liam and Ed. I can never do that. Our 2 friends from Washington tend to be the first one to register every year, so they get row 1, position 6. Now, let's say Joe Mann and John Boogie decide to race again, but they don't want to do the prelim. Joe lives in Missouri, John lives in Luling, not an out-of-state team. Correct? This is probably more a thing for you to know just for practice. This is San Marcos City Park. It is public access. It's generally where most of us put in to start practicing on the upper river because you cannot paddle on Spring Lake until the morning of the race.
Please say that again for anyone who wasn't listening.
You cannot paddle on Spring Lake except for the morning of the race. That includes starting at City Park, paddling up to Burleson Dam, and crawling over the dam or whatever. Stay off of the dam, man. I mean, we've had access to this place for the better part of 60 years. We don't want to jeopardize that for the race, and we don't want to jeopardize the mission of the Meadows Center either. So, this is where you would generally start to practice in the upper part of the upper river. I went backwards. This is an aerial view of Rio Vista. Man, if you're a spectator and not a team captain, this is the place to go. If you're a team captain, this is not the place to go because parking stinks and getting to the next place is a hassle. This is how, I think it was Ashley had put these photos in there. She labeled it this crowd navigation because when you get to Rio Vista, every exposed place is going to have a body on it. And, you're going to get there and you might say some bad words to people who are standing in your way. Or even your fellow racers that are standing in your way because this is early in the race, it's fast, it's crowded, and it's probably one of the 2 or 3 best spectator spots in the entire shooting match. So try not to hurt anybody. Now, yes.
Just one thing about the traffic, there's so many vehicles now with 2 team captains, and I don't think you can see the start of the race and then make it to Rio Vista, and because the traffic is just going to be horrible. So get with your team captains and plan where you're going to be, and maybe station them further down the river.
Kristen, when's the last time you watched the start of a race?
Yeah, most team captains are
1996?
Maybe. Has gotten into Spring Lake and they are good. They don't need any last little thing. I leave. Blow them a kiss and say goodbye. It's like, see ya, and then I head down to San Marcos River Retreat and set up there for my first handoff spot.
I wonder if Jerry could say a little something about parking because that is a real issue.
Will you come this way and speak up so everybody will hear?
just typically what we do at the start, we'll have the parking lot across from the Meadow Center. It's one of the parking lots for the football stadium. And we'll have a shuttle that can go back and forth. So there's very limited parking if you're gonna get there the morning of the race. If you do that, drive down in there, drop your stuff off, and then try to get the vehicles out. Especially if you have two team captains and 3 or 4 family members, there's just not enough parking there. So try to be courteous and get your stuff in there, and then try to make room for everybody else. So that's really, just parking is always just a big mess there. And the shuttles will run until like 9:30. So if you want to go sit there and watch the start, that's fine, but just try not to get in a big hurry to get out, because you're not going to get out very quick. So, yeah, and that will be set up Friday as well for check-in. So you can park in the shuttle parking lot and then go drop your boat off, go back and park in the shuttle area, and then that way there's room for everybody to get in and out.
Rio Vista does have a slot you can run through. I mean, but you have to be really cool, and you have to be able to keep all the water out of your boat. These guys had the right boat set up for it. They also had the right setup for the bay this year. So this is actually the team that won this last year, Tommy and Jonathan Yonley. This is kind of a good overview of what's happening with all the different boats getting in and out at the same time. Have to tell you, you don't want to be, this is just left of that slot I showed you. You don't want one of these boats of any size landing on you. It hurts. This is, if you take out far left and follow the trail all the way around, I think it's pretty funny that Peyton is laughing and running, carrying the boat, while his cousin just watches him do all the work. This is the put-in you'll find right above Cheatham Street. There's several little slots in there. You know, prepare to get wet. If you try to use all the little steps getting down in there, you're going to hold everybody up, and somebody's going to run their boat over you, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Cape's Dam. I wonder if I've got a picture out of order. This is just below Highway 35. I must have a picture out of order here. I took one out. Just below Highway 35, it's an old irrigation dam. I mentioned earlier that you have to go under the road bridge here. There's hardly enough water to go left anymore. I mean, you could force it, but generally the portage is just past there's an old set of steps there. If you see these balloons or barricades, if you would, you know, that's to stop people from there's it's not really trespassing, but it's just kind of a big warning sign. They don't want people, mainly tubers, getting over it. How did I take that picture of? I had a really good picture. This is Cummins Dam. You'll see this is about 5 miles into the race. I used to try to show a picture of the Blanco River, but I will tell you that once you've gone below Interstate 35 and you've portaged at Thompson's Island and you've wound your way down for about 4.5 miles or so, the river's gonna come to a T. You can either go left or you can go right. As a general rule in the water safari, left is wrong and right is right. And this is the epitome of that case. If you turn left, you're going up the Blanco River. I don't guess the last few years you could go but about a half mile, but we had a team that made it all the way to the Walmart a few years ago. Can't make this stuff up, right? And ended up out of the race. There are multiple ways to portage Cummins Dam. This is the center portage. You see there's people going over to the right next to the center. There's a piece of black pipe in there. You've got the guys using the other buttress. This is a much more common approach, is to use these buttresses to slide boats down. And that's when you're just happy to paddle away from it all. Ironically, you'll go past Westfield Road. This is probably the first real common spectator point. Nobody really goes to Thompson's Island because there's zilch for parking there, and everybody else is probably still trying to get out of the mess at Rio Vista. But when you get to Westfield Road, be careful because it's, you know, the speed limit is such that you shouldn't get run over, but it's just not a good place to be on the bridge anymore.
And so many people go down to San Marcos River Retreat.
Right. Also, that's right. Tom and Paula Goins on San Marcos River Retreat. Tom is a former race chairman from the mid 70s to the late 80s, and they have a place, and it's on race day. Everybody can use that, and it's much more user friendly than this. This is Cottonseed Rapid. Oddly enough, nobody sent me a picture of anybody in a boat in Cottonseed.
I was doing access, I'm sorry.
That's funny. I just thought about that when I was finishing up the other day. Like, I mean, I could have put pictures of me, but that's pretty narcissistic of me. And I'd probably be swimming at that point.
We do have lots of pictures on the Facebook page
Yep.
and albums if you want to go.
But this is the view. Cottonseed is one of those places. Perkins family is very generous in letting us use this every year, but only for the race. Don't try to park there and access it during practice or training. You know, that's trespassing at that point because you do not have permission to be on the property.
And in years past, and we will have it this year, we'll also have 2 officers there monitoring because people would park so close that an emergency vehicle couldn't get through. So it'll be parking off to the side. We'll go over there and check and make sure you park off to the side. And if you're planning to go there, you probably need to get there early to make sure you get a spot. So it might be something you skip further down, one of those times.
You know, pretty good rule of thumb is remember Texas is 97% privately owned. That means probably 97%, probably closer to 99% of the race course, except for actually bridge crossings, is on private property. You know, you technically always have access at a bridge, but there's some of them that it's just not practical to get down. So anywhere we have access like this, do your best to follow all the leave no trace, et cetera, et cetera. And that even applies to, like, you know, Luling Gravel Bar is a city park, and Luling Dam is a city park, and Palmetto State Park and Victoria City Park. You know, if we leave a bunch of trash, sooner or later, you know, or you know, they're going to say, this isn't worth our while. And none of them want that, but, you know, the highway department has actually given us a call before because we didn't clean up after ourselves properly. So anyhow, none of you did that because y'all are new to this, but don't be the next guy. Cottonseed, this is spectators. This is an overhead view of Martindale Dam. Look, I'm going to tell you Portage right. There's some other ways to do it. You can go get on YouTube and find them if you want to. Probably you're not there yet. So Portage right, come around and come down that concrete apron and get back in. Unless, of course, it's high water and we told you to portage further. This is the Martindale Low Water Bridge. This can be a mandatory portage in high water. I'm pretty sure Stephanie still has a stripe across her forehead from going under here in one year where it was pretty close and the boat pitched up. Is that Curry?
Yeah, it's Tim Curry.
Oh man, he's gonna screw this up. Tim is one of my very best friends, which tells you I was really hurting for friends that day. But this is a boat eater, man. I mean, it's amazing. Until when did you take that out of there, Jerry? That piece of yeah, there used to be a piece of like railroad track that was in there for reinforcement or something. Man, it unzipped a bunch of boats. Then Jerry took it out and made some really cool trophies out of it. But it's still, there's a bunch of rock and riprap from different years, and I mean, it's not as simple as you would think just to go under this little bridge here. Staples Bridge, this is mile 16. This is the first checkpoint. That's, let's see, who is that? Jonathan Yonley on the far left, Tom Goins in the middle, and our hero Jerry Cochran there to the right. I'm wearing the same jacket you had on this morning, man. Styling. That's the cutoff is 2 o'clock on Saturday. I thought I wrote Sunday there for a second. That would take a really long time to go 16 miles, wouldn't it? But that's the first cutoff. That's the first one that can get you. Now from here's where the race course gets tough. I would say all the way from Staples all the way to Luling Gravel Bar, which is Highway 90, that's full. You know, it can be anything if the water's up a little bit. You know, it can be really smooth sailing, but if it's down a little bit, it's been catching logs and crud and debris and everything for the last, you know, I don't know, since Moses was a baby or so, and it can tear some stuff up. There's lots of sweepers, strainers. You know, if you break your boat on a gravel bar, start looking for arrowheads. I mean, it'd keep you occupied for a while. But then make sure you tell somebody you're out of the race. First bridge past Staples is Fentress. Just kind of gotten overrun in recent years, and I don't mean for the race, I mean just in general. And so there are parking signs, there are no parking signs, however the right way to say that is, that are pretty far away from the bridge where you can actually start parking. So if you're going here, make sure you follow those no parking signs. Hey Morgan, if you're a member of the TCKRA, you know, you may have signed up in time to get a parking pass for Amigos, which is right where this picture's taken from, and you can park in there. But make sure you follow the parking rules. And again, early on in the race, this is a pretty crowded place. Staples, I didn't even mention the parking there. Same kind of thing. You know, there's really no parking lot. And the two places that there are to park are private property. So, you know, don't go through a gate. You know, you're gonna have to park along the street. And I tell you, the mid-pack is probably where that is the worst, because, you know, you've got 75 boats that are within 15 minutes of each other, and that means 150 team captains, and everybody's looking for a place to park. So, and we usually have police officers there on the bridge, don't we?
We'll have a few officers there to slow people down, and if you're, like, you've got two team captains standing, try to park as far away and getting one vehicle if you're trying to get closer. We're still working on trying to get another area there to park. But, it's gonna be a mess.
But Fentress is pretty popular. Handoff spot is the 9 miles or so after you leave Staples. You look like you're gonna tell me something like don't stop there or whatever, go to Jerry's house. This just to give you an idea of how twisted the river gets through that. Some of this won't mean anything. Fentress Bridge we just talked about. Prairie Lee 1 is,
Talk about how many people are in the river.
what's that?
All the keepers that are in the
Oh, that's something that's really changed. Starting at Fentress down to Prairie Lee, there's always been one campground on River Left. About 2 years ago, another campground / tubing outfit opened on River Right. And I'm trying to think of how I would, any of y'all from Houston? So if you're ever on the Katy Freeway or the Gulf Freeway at rush hour, that's pretty close. I mean, or if you're on the West Park Tollway and there's been a wreck, it's just, you can't hardly get through there anymore. And they have every right to be there. I mean, they're not doing anything wrong. And generally they know we're coming. And so, if you're the first boat, it's kind of cool because as you're coming through, it's like, it's like, roar of the crowd. And then they kind of get complacent pretty quickly. And you don't want to be the guy who runs into a toddler and injures them. And I don't say that to be flippant. I mean, it's really a possibility. So you need to have control of your boat going through that. That's a really good point. Prairie Lee 1 is small bridge, they redid it, man, a long time ago now, I guess. Showing my age, you know, it used to be like something you had to lay back and go under. Not a big deal anymore. There is a campground right below Prairie Lea 1. That can be pretty crowded as well. That's a pretty short stretch, but it's also in a stretch where there's generally some stuff you have to dodge. So just be aware of that. Stairtown, the parking is not good, but there's public access on the downstream left side, and it's a good handoff. It's just the team captains don't dig it because they've got to walk away, but the crowding is not there that you've had just upstream. Anything you want to add about that?
Checkpoint is just a good place.
It's just a public access.
Yeah, just a place to hand off. Checkpoints,
Was it Staples?
was at Staples, and the next one is right below this, about 6 miles. Now, the most boat-eaten stretch of river lately has been from Stairtown to Highway 90. Gosh, when did we go cut all that stuff out, Jerry? Is that like 4 years ago? You know, there was one place it was like a boat magnet. You know, it's just like come around the corner and like probably 4 or 5 boats got tore up there during practice. That's looking at the.
That's your chance to.
That's the Stairtown Gravel Bar, the late great. Luling 90, this is the next checkpoint. You're going under a railroad bridge, which you'll hear several times before you get there. Parking here is interesting because there's a lot of parking. However, getting underneath the bridges here is difficult. So if people aren't conscious of how they're parking, it makes it really difficult to get in and out. Y'all started just taking one vehicle in, right? Or did y'all quit even driving in there?
No, we drive in, I mean, because it's such a long walk.
But,
You
you
have
know,
to be very careful.
again, all of these places, you know, parking, it's not designed for as many folks as we have coming to watch the race, and it gets just more and more every year. The cutoff time is 8 p.m. This has probably been the checkpoint that has gotten the most folks through the years. I don't know that for mathematical fact, but it's just,
I think we have the same check time this year as we've always had.
Yeah.
right.
that didn't-
Matter of fact, you have more time to get from Staples to Luling 90 than you used to have. You just don't have any more time to get to Luling 90 total.
The reason this one is so busy is because it's a free park, and people are down in the river, and there could be 75 to 100 people in the river. In fact, your people have to kind of weave through them, and they don't control it in any way. And by the way, from about 5 o'clock till the cutoff at night, you have to sometimes park half a mile away to walk into there because there's no parking there. I'm just telling you, it's one of the worst because of that.
Yeah, Kristen and I,
Hot.
and it's hot, you know, the 98 flood took out all the shade trees. And it's interesting because, like Bob said, it's public access. Kristen and I were team captain in 2019 for a team, and literally I ended up rescuing a little girl who had floated down from her family and was hanging on a tree, you know, screaming for dear life. Truth is, she should have just let go of the branch and floated around the corner. Should have been fine, but she didn't know that, and that water was ripping that particular time.
So there's plenty of room if you want to do the handoff further downstream, do your handoff, and then come back and sign your team in.
Yeah, and that's right. You know, it goes. Y'all met us around the corner
Yeah,
last time,
we've
didn't
gone
you?
all the way.
You know, it's a pretty good hike, but there's lots of room to spread out. Sometimes the bloodweed's pretty thick. Leaving Luling 90, this is the map all the way down to Autee, but you'll see Luling 80. It's pretty twisted through there. There's a couple of pretty tight spots, but it's nothing like what you've dealt with. You can almost breathe a sigh of relief, but almost. Still pay attention to what you're doing. Probably one of the bigger spectator points that is not a checkpoint is Luling Dam. And, you know, I guess about 10 years ago, the city actually ended up with owning the maybe it's more than that. You know, everything's 10 years ago now at my age, which could be, you know, 1964. Not really that old. Jerry and Bob are, but I'm not. And so the city owns both sides, and so there's lots of parking on River Right, assuming it's dry, you know, and, you know, and my goodness, please, you know, again, you know, don't make roads where there are none. This is a portage going over the buttress on, you know, that's a pretty common thing, certainly for big boats. This is the trail around River Right, which is probably a safer route than going over the buttresses. And that's just an overview of the whole thing. And it's really important to smile after you make this portage, because there's always a member of the social media team sitting at this corner. You know, so no matter how bad that portage went, you need to smile, because it's going to be out there for everybody to see. There's no pictures of this. Little Atene, the rock slide, whatever, son of Atene, whatever else you want to call it, is about 4 miles, I guess, I'm guessing too, from I-10, if you've gone under that. There used to be a pretty good slot to run it through the left of center. There's, as far as I'm concerned, there's no good slot left. In low water, you just need to pick a spot to portage it at. On river left is still the remains of the old, what do you call it, mill race. And you don't want to get your boat down in that mill race. There's all kinds of boat eating stuff in there. So you can portage river left, river right, even portage over the center. There's places to step. It's just mess. It's a mess. And down below it, I haven't seen it since this last rise, but get to wash it out? Oh man, y'all are gonna miss the entertainment. Never mind, nothing to see here.
Change it anything.
That's never, you know, I will never ever say this is exactly how the San Marcos River is, because I've literally paddled from Palmetto State Park to Gonzales during the day and paddled it like 4 hours later when it got dark, and got somewhere wondering, what the heck is this? I caught myself, hey, Mom, see? And what the heck is, and a tree had fallen within that 4 hours. I mean, it's just amazing how fast it can change. Get to Palmetto State Park, you know, you guys will never know the joy, never will know the joy of portaging Atene Dam, because it's gone. I mean, and when I say gone, I mean like it is gone, completely removed. Palmetto State Park, the cutoff is 6 a.m. on Sunday. However, you're coming into the low water bridge, and it's crowded. You can see all these folks up on it. There's, and how you get over or around this changes with the water level. This has been the way it's been happening the last few years. Just shove your boat underneath the far right side or the far left side. And a little bit higher water, more commonly. What's that?
That's what's point.
What'd she say?
Point.
Oh.
That's point's boat.
How do you tell with all the stickers on it?
That's what held it together.
Yeah. You know, if graffiti was a thing on boats, that would be Hoyt's boat. It's like every beer sticker that ever, you know, I'm not saying he drinks a lot. What's that? Oh, it's roughly 58 and a half, 60 miles. This is probably a not quite high water level, but getting up there where you'd have folks on top of the bridge. Who almost said the big one. for heaven's sakes, do not let your kids run wild here. And if you are letting them run wild here, make sure if they're little, they have a PFD. I happen to know a certain almost 22-year-old that when she was very small, decided she wasn't going to listen to her grandparents. Wonder if my daughter's listening. And came off of that bridge, but she had her PFD on, and somebody scooped her up around the corner. I mean, it's that kind of place. You don't want to be playing around here. And you sure as heck do not want to be playing around upstream of this thing. It'll eat a boat, and it'll eat people if we're given the chance.
This is one of those places where we sometimes reserve the right to change a rule or come up with a rule we need to. And at this particular one, some years ago, or maybe more than once, we've actually pulled boats out during the race just upstream of this because it was so dangerous. One year we even had a young girl who was there, not in the race, fell in and we had to rescue her, pulled her out right at the bridge. And we also had racers that did the same thing. So if the water is up or not even up, it'd be good to see this before the race.
Right.
Just to have a plan. Because this one, we'll make a change in whatever the rules are if we need to for safety, and we've had to at this location.
All right, any questions down to Palmetto? 60 miles? Everybody got that? Getting pretty tired at this point. This is probably the last place it's actually fun to be in the race because, there's lots of spectators here. From here on out, if you're lucky, your mom will come see you and your dad. You're
When you have the marathon, it's up to this point, to this part.
I'm
You have
sorry.
the marathon event.
Oh, no, the marathon is down below.
That's
Yeah,
like a different course.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. I mean, this is just the last place that's a common spectator point. Maybe Gonzales a little bit, but not so much. Sladen Cemetery Bridge, you can no longer drive over Sladen. You've now missed the experience of thinking, is my truck going through this thing? Because they blocked it off. It isn't some stupid zombie movie. It's in a zombie movie. You're gonna strike that whole stupid thing.
It kind of feels like you're in something.
Yeah, and on a good day, it feels like a zombie movie. I mean, you can use it for a handoff spot, but it is probably
Tell
the
your
worst.
team, no, thank you. Move on.
All I need to do to worry about getting divorced is tell her we want to use that for a handoff spot. Man, we pulled a guy out there one time that had a heart attack, didn't we? Or thought he was having a heart attack. That is a blank slide that I didn't take out. Palmetto State Park down to the confluence and Gonzo. You see Sladen there. It's a pretty twisted stretch of river. Below Sladen, the bridge I just showed you tends to be the area that can have the biggest jams on the San Marcos River because it's backing up off of the WAD. It's an aerial view of Gonzales Dam. Starting a few years ago, you see that red line. Shouldn't make that thicker, huh? See that red line? That is the mandatory portage around Gonzales. It's on the left-hand side. Used to be kind of a free-for-all. And some idiot fell on the right-hand side, knocked himself out, went to the hospital, had a concussion, or so they tell him. He doesn't remember. Anyway, that wasn't the whole reason. And this is also the checkpoint now. That's starting last year, and the cutoff time at Gonzo Dam is 4 p.m. Sunday. Did somebody raise their hand, or we're just... 4 p.m. Sunday. Used to be the checkpoint, and this is, I should have said something about Jerry Nunnery at this point. Jerry Nunnery is usually our checkpoint official at Gonzales, even when it was at the Grand Bars here. So feel free to say something obscene to him. He's one of my favorite people on the planet, but he gives it as good as he gets, for sure. The gravel bar is a good area to sleep, or it's pretty, I should rephrase it. It is a common area to sleep at. However, it can get pretty noisy because it is right under the 183 bridge. If you're going to sleep, I would suggest telling your team captain you're going to sleep and going downstream a bit and finding one of those gravel bars. But apparently you can sleep there just fine. That stretch is it is the longest stretch that you go through on the entire race course that there is no public access to. Now, all that to be said, you're going to read on the interwebs about, I use this place and I use that place. Unless you've talked to the landowner, you don't have permission. And that's the way it is. Now, feel free to put in the legwork and get permission. That's fine. But you have to plan ahead here. It's basically 37 miles from Gonzales to Hoheim 180. The river makes a big, wide, and you end up on the same highway that you just ran under. I can never think of any distinguishing thing to tell them in here. I guess when you get to about mile 29, there's an island that some people refer to as Monkey Island. Russ probably wrote that story. Pretty good story about, why it's called Monkey Island, which is complete BS. But you'll notice that I've got these waypoints on here. If you're using a GPS, it's worthwhile to mark some of these things while you're practicing, just so you have an idea where you're at. The one death that we've ever had during the water safari occurred in this area. There will be on river left, there'll be 3 places where there are signs that tell you where you're at. And I put them up, started doing that last year because if for some reason you need to call in assistance for someone else or yourself, and you can tell me you're upstream or downstream, or you've passed such and such sign, that's useful information.
And the safety officials have access.
Yeah, we have access to it. I mean, and there's plenty of folks that are racing that have access. My point is, it's just not public access.
Question, Chris. What does the sign say?
It's going to tell you the name of the particular. I'm blanking on the names of the 3 places right now. What's that?
It'll say it.
One I want to call Tortilla Flats because that's what the guy has a sign up that says. But maybe that's what I'll call it on the sign this year. And that's probably about a little more than halfway in. And then there's some places just up from that that it'll have the landowner's name and the approximate mileage on it.
River left or right? Okay.
Those are all river left.
All river left, in case you can hear that.
Hoheim Highway 183, cutoff time at 4 a.m. Monday. This is the absolute, well.
Armpit? Oh.
Wait, look, it even got labeled. Hoheim is likely the armpit of Texas. God help me, there's somebody ever meet anybody that's from Hoheim, right? I mean,
Oh, and it's misspelled. Darn it, sorry. It actually has 2 H's, I believe, doesn't it?
no.
Hoheim? Yeah. No. H-O-C-H-A-G. No, that's
I've been misspelling it for 40 years, I believe. Pictures can't adequately show you how steep the bank is here. That guy is using that road for a reason. And it's a, I mean, you see how they're kind of on that slope.
Just wait till it's muddy.
Wait till it's muddy. Once you get to the bottom, it's a pretty decent place to hand off if it's relatively dry. But this is another place where, again, we keep talking about parking. Parking is pretty limited under the bridge. If it's been raining, it's all of this parking is pretty much null and void. you're parking up along the shoulder on the highway. We've in the last few years, we've actually had a police officer stay there at night with their lights flashing. You've got to be careful coming in and out of this place because, you know.
We're going 70.
Well, that's what the sign says, is it can't be going any faster.
This is one place, don't think just because you have a big four-wheel drive pickup truck that you're gonna be able to get in and out. If there's mud down there, you're gonna get stuck. So if it's muddy, stops further back, don't drive down there.
You'll just get stuck further.
You will get stuck.
What's the top of you guys stuff, not my truck.
It wasn't here though.
I did that already. Hoheim to Cheapside, again, I can't think of any really distinguishing landmark to tell you, except for you're going to see a radio tower. And you're going to think to myself, why would they think to myself? You're going to think to yourself, man, I must be getting close because that radio tower is right there by the bridge. And, you know, it can't be more than just a little bit away. And then you turn and you don't see the radio tower. Then you turn and you see it again. And you think, I must really be close now. And then you turn, I think it's 3 times you see it before you're there. It's just a whole lot of, you know, pretty decent current and big tall banks. I think a little just upstream, probably about 1.5 miles upstream of the bridge, it gets real twisted because this used to be flooded from Cuero Dam, which is no longer, the dam's still there, it just has a big hole in it. And so it's pretty twisty through there, and there can be some things to bite you. Cutoff at Cheapside is 11 a.m. on Monday.
What is it? It says 2 p.m. Monday on the map online.
On the update?
Cheapside 766.
On the map, which map?
I'm looking at on the water safari course map. It's got
Can't
little
get on my phone.
waypoints.
Let me pull it up.
Pull it up.
It's that one changed. It's 11 a.m.
Here, I'm connected to them.
Oh, okay. All right, so just updated.
What's that?
Oh, why is the course map showing up now?
The course map's not supposed to be online right now, which is what really threw me.
Well, it wasn't working yesterday.
It wasn't, yeah, it's like literally pulled up.
11 a.m. Monday, got it.
This is a view looking upstream. In dry to moderate conditions, this is a pretty good handoff spot. Using this boat ramp, some people prefer to use the sandbar that's just downstream because there's a little more room. How do you do that? But really nothing to it. You see the pin that says Cuero Dam? I don't have, this is probably the best image I have of it. You see the dam here on the right-hand side of the picture, the pin, and then you see all of these spots where there's water going around. I forget what year it finally blew open, but it's kind of settled into this. But all of this that's on my left-hand side tends to catch debris when the water's really fluctuating a lot. And so even experienced racers or longtime racers tend to think, oh, there's nothing from Cheapside to 236, and get in there and find out that there's gunga-munga in this area. So that's probably an area worth knowing. I mentioned earlier that overland portage is illegal, and I mentioned that the river tends to change course at the same time. So this next slide, the river literally used to follow this loop just above 236, and in the year in 1992 we used that where it goes through as a shortcut. and then it became the river, and so it literally cut a mile of the race off. So you're really only getting 259 miles or whatever out of the whole gig. But I guess we added it back on at the bay, right? We're going to average it out. Highway 236 used to be the start of the prelim race, but is downstream now. The cutoff is 3 p.m. Now a pretty long stretch of river with not a lot of, well, I guess there's some little bitty rapids in this first section. It's about 9 miles until you get to River Haven, which is where we start the prelim of the Texas River Marathon. What's the name of the RV park? Changed. Is it River Haven RV Park? Okay, River Haven RV Park is where it starts. If, again, I know I keep beating on this, but the horse ain't dead enough. If you decide I'm going to go practice the prelim course and I'm going to put in at River Haven, you need to check in at the RV park, and if they say, great, parking, go ahead, that's fine. If they say, it's $10 to park here and access the river, then pay your fee. There's it's an easy one to abuse because we use it for the prelim, and everybody tends to think, oh, we can just go in here, but it is private property, as is everything along that stretch where the RV park is. 236, the decent parking here for the most part. Even when it's wet, that's generally a pretty good parking spot. So we've left there. You see where it says River Haven in the pen. Polecat does not mean that's where Bill is buried, but that's Polecat Rapid. It's not much of a rapid, but it's amazing how many people go swimming there. Not a lot to really eat your boat up, but De Leon Rapid, which is below the Thomaston Bridge. Again, this is a low water shot. You can see that there's the sensor spot is the most likely place that you want to go. You're gonna see this during the prelim. It's pretty rare that it's something that's really dangerous. It just is a good place to go swimming, or a bad place to go swimming, or somehow you don't really want to swim, but it could happen to you. Victoria City Park boat ramp. Cutoff is 6 a.m. Tuesday, but it doesn't say that on that map either. Again, this is public property. We get a special permit. We get a special permit to use it overnight, and so just try to treat it nice.
There's limited parking at the moment.
Yeah. I think I even wrote that on the next slide. Parking is limited near the boat ramp, and use caution with parking along the road, because again, it's a city park. There's probably 20 parking places down there. If there's 20, which means 5 of them are taken up by the checkpoint officials, and it's a small lot to begin with. I don't like parking my truck in there when it's dry. And up along the road, it's fenced off, not fenced off, but it has, I guess it's fenced, low, just marking and there's not a lot of room to get out, but you don't want to block the road. You really don't want to block the road getting down to the ramp again, because that's ambulance access or emergency vehicle access. There are, I don't know why we didn't think of this like 40 years ago, but there's some better handoff spots downstream that you can access by using one of the small parking areas. I think the city park has renamed those, like it's something beach and something else beach, where they're gravel bars that are really useful for handoffs. And so, pretty good place to go. Yeah, the prelim is a good time to check that out. And the prelim ends at the pump house, which is actually, we haven't got there yet.
And they're working on another dock and put in, I don't know if it's, at least that's what they told me, maybe it's a little before the restaurant, but there's another one they're working on, which would also be a good place to
Right.
make a connection.
It has better parking, maybe we should move the checkpoint. What's that?
They have margaritas.
At the checkpoint? Oh. If the pump house is open and those margaritas are available to everyone,
And we brought our own money.
or I guess your team captain can deliver it to you. Yeah, yeah. That'd be can you imagine being hammered going from 175 to I'm hammered without even drinking. The water's up a little bit in this one. The wooden dock that's adjacent to the boat ramp is a pretty good handoff spot. Victoria DuPont, in some ways, is where the race really starts. When you leave Victoria City Park, there's a number of sweepers and what have you till you get to we get to the pump house first, and you'll see that there.
Sorry.
And, you know, for those of you who would like, you've got your margarita and what have you. You get to Business 59, what they call it now. Business 59 used to be I guess it's still there, a power station right there. And that's where the river starts getting pretty twisty. A lot of sandbars and everything through there. And then you're going to get to Highway 59 or Loop 175 get around for a while. This actually has pretty good parking in most circumstances. And it is the end of the paddling trail, if I'm not incorrect, Bob, is that right?
It's my kid.
The end of the Victoria paddling trail. However, and they've actually gone in and made some pretty good steps down the river. However, it's gotten to that point in the river where the banks are pretty soft and silty. And so, if it's pretty wet, you know, it smells like a dead fish.
Yeah. You don't want to stay along there,
Yeah,
Tom.
that's what,
Roy, is the sound still good for Facebook? I had to plug in my charger, so if you can't hear, please let me know.
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. It's you they need to hear, then.
So when you leave 175 or Highway 59, this is important information for you. There are 105 turns between Loop 175 and Swinging Bridge. Why is this important? Because you need something to occupy your brain. So I want you to all count them, and then find me a secret and tell me if you got to 105. And if you didn't get it right, you need to come back the next year and count it for me again. I've never landed, the only time I've gotten it right was like looking at topo maps. The first time I ever ran this script in a practice, it got dark on us. And it's generally an open section. There could be some jam right above Fairway Creek. But this is back in the dark ages, before GPS and all that stuff. And we had these little maps that were like cartoon maps. And it showed Highway 59 was this far on the map. And then Loop 75 was about that far on the map. And then Loop 175 to Swinging Bridge was about that far on the map. So we got to 59 in about an hour. It's like, all right, that's good. Got to Loop 175 in about another hour. All right, that's good. How far is it? I don't know. It's about that far on the map. And about 4 hours later, we get there. And my cousin has gone and gotten the sheriff because she's flipping out. And, you know, about the time you think you're almost there, you see the plant, the lights are, you know, the DuPont plant. Not DuPont.
Invista.
You see the lights off on the plant, and you think, I'm almost there, and then the river makes a right. Then you turn back and you see it again, and it turns back around again. And it's like the most twisted area that you can could possibly imagine. So you need that 105 to count to find your way. Or do it enough times where you've got some landmarks that you can identify yourself. But it's really about the time, and it's getting about that time of the race. Even if you're up towards the front of the pack, you've been awake for a long time, and your brain is starting to do weird things. So, 105 turns, 9 miles to Colorado Creek. Swinging Bridge cutoff is 6 p.m. Tuesday. I could not find my picture of Swinging Bridge because, like the actual Swinging Bridge.
I would love to see that.
It's still there. You'll know what it is when you get there. It's an old suspension bridge. Dalton Bridge is what it calls it if you've got a topo map. And somewhere on a VHS tape, I've got a picture of a cattle trailer going over that thing, and that thing is buckling up and buckling down, and that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. 6 p.m. on Tuesday. So think about it. 6 p.m. on Tuesday means that you're, what is that, 69 hours you've been awake when you get there, if you're running right on. Probably if you get there in 69 hours, you've been awake the entire time. But you get the feeling it's a long way into the race. Victoria, for somebody who was asking mileage earlier, Victoria City Park is right at 200. Watch out for this checkpoint crew. They got jokes. I mean, you're going to find every rubber snake and every rubber alligator and along with the real snakes and the real alligators.
Yeah, warn your team captains.
Warn your team captains because they are there. This is another relatively unpleasant checkpoint. It's probably one of the few that is much better in high water than low water because the river comes up, it's pretty even all the way across, and you get a pretty flat thing.
That's actually the color of the river for real. Like, I can't actually make it blue. It's not. It's brownish greenish most of the time.
That must be the Cowboys leaving because that is in the back to it.
Yep.
It's pretty steep to get down to the water in low water conditions. Now I talked about the fact that your brain's getting whacked out and you have 105 turns between 175 or Highway 59 and Swinging Bridge. The next place actually kind of has a name. They call it Hallucination Alley. I had a whole phone conversation one time during the race that was before cell phones were a thing. And apparently I had an entire business conversation, never quit paddling or steering the boat. That was also the year it got to 118 degrees during the race. That was not my idea of a good time. This is also, I should mention, this is the area that the Gator Chase race is going to take place on. The day after the prelim, it's going to start at the checkpoint, and it's going to go down to Calhoun at Highway 35, which is 20 and a half, 21 miles in round figures.
I'll talk to them about that.
Okay. The problem is unless you know somebody who owns land down here, there's not a good way to practice this trick without putting it at 175 and paddling all the way to Tyrone. All that said, and again, you're going to hear somebody talking about they did this or they did that. Make sure you have permission to do this or that.
You cannot go into Swinging Bridge checkpoint during the year unless it's already approved. Do not go in there. They will arrest you.
That's true. And part of the problem is, apparently this can be a relatively popular place for drug deals to happen. And so there's quite frequently a sheriff's car down there to eliminate that. So unless one of you is a drug dealer, you don't have any business being there. And is that okay? Yeah,
It's
if
over.
you're a drug dealer, you have permission to get arrested there. That's what I'm
Please
trying
don't
to
get
say.
arrested.
And I have to say, this is the part, I've heard every lie that is possible. I mean, it's like, I got down there one time to do something, and this guy said, yeah, the safari board guys just paddled off to go check out the, and it's like, the who? I said, I'm the safari board guy. You know, so folks, you know, again, be respectful. This is the beginning of several jams in this area. This is the infamous thing known as the Cowboys. And when you hear it referred to, people will say down at the jam, it's usually a series of jams. There's a horseshoe in the river that's and that the river slows down such that it just the logs tend to get caught up in that. The GBRA has tried with varying degrees of success to keep the jam clear, but you know you're fighting Mother Nature at that point. And so what's happened? This is my favorite stretch of the whole river. So what has ended up happening is the river has made cuts off to the right. And so now you're going to hear people talking about the jams, hear people talking about the cuts. It's pretty cool artwork about the cuts, that kind of thing. And I tell you this in all seriousness, if somebody gives you a GPS track, if they say, here it is, this is the track to go through here. I don't know whether I want to double dog dare you to use it or tell you to throw it away, because it is so inaccurate in that particular area that you can find yourself, 10 yards off to the right where your track is telling you to go,